What's good? Today, I felt like trying to do some live reading. It's not technically live, I'm using a movie maker, but to me it's live because I'm more or less just going for it. Of R. Buckminster Fuller's Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. I just was going to do a few pages that kind of made me chuckle a little bit, starting on chapter 6, which is titled Synergy. I cannot do accents, but I try. And if you've never listened to Bucky talk, you should YouTube one of his lectures. He is very passionate and has a distinctive voice and almost like a cadence as well. And he writes kind of like that. And it's a bit of word salad, but he was just a brilliant man with a big heart who really wanted to make a difference in the world and use his abilities to do so. Okay, let's get to the reading. Chapter 6, Synergy. We will now tackle our present world's problems with the family of powerful thought tools: topology, geodesics, synergetics, general systems theory, and the computer's operational bidding. To ensure our inclusion of all the variables with which we must eventually deal, we will always start synergetically with universe. Now that universe is defined and thus provides us with the master containment, we will then state our unique problem and divest ourselves progressively and definitively of all the micro-macro irrelevancies. Are humans necessary? Are there experiential clues that human intellect has an integral function in regenerative universe as has gravity? How can Earthians fulfill their function and thus avoid extinction as unfit? To start with, we will now progressively subdivide universe and isolate the thinkable concept by bits through progressively dismissing residual irrelevancies. Our first isolated bit is the system, which at maximum is the starry macrocosmic, and at minimum, the atomic nucleus. The second bit reduces the macrocosmic limit to that of the galactic nebula. The third bit separates out the cosmic radiation, gravity, and the solar system. And the fourth bit isolates the cosmic radiation, gravity, sun, its energized, life-bearing spaceship Earth, together with the Earth's moon as the most prominent components of the life regeneration on Spaceship Earth. I would like to inventory rapidly the system variables which I find to be by far the most powerful in the consideration of our present life regenerating evolution aboard our spaceship as it is continually refueled radiationally by the sun and other cosmic radiation. Thus, we may, by due process, suddenly and excitingly discover why we are here alive in the universe, and identify ourselves as presently operating here, aboard our spaceship, and situated aboard its spherical deck, for example, Washington, D.C., on the North American continent, thinking effectively regarding the relevant contemporary and local experiences germane to the solution of humanity's successful and happy survival aboard our planet. Holy shit. He didn't write that. We may thus discover not only what needs to be done in a fundamental way, but also we may discover how it may be accomplished by our own directly seized initiative, undertaken and sustained without any further authority than that of our function in universe, where the most ideal is the most realistically practical. Thus, we may avoid all the heretofore frustrating factors of uninspired patron guidance of our work, such as the patron's supine concessions to the non-synergetical thinking, and therefore ignorantly conditioned reflexes of the least well-advised of the potential mass customers. Typical of the subsidiary problems within the whole human survival problem, whose ramifications now go beyond the prerogatives of planners and must be solved, is the problem of pollution in general. Pollution not only of our air and water, but also of the information stored in our brains. We will soon have to rename our planet Pluto. In respect to our planet's life-sustaining atmosphere, we find that, yes, we do have technically feasible ways of precipitating the fumes, and after this, we say, but it costs too much. There are also ways of desalinating seawater, and we say, but it costs too much. This too narrow treatment of the problem never faces the inexorably evolving and solution-insistent problem of what it will cost when we don't have the air and water with which to survive. It takes months to starve to death, weeks to thirst to death, but only minutes to suffocate. We cannot survive without water for the length of time it takes to produce and install desalinization equipment, adequate to supply, for instance, all of New York City. A sustained and often threatened water shortage in New York City could mean death for millions of humans. Each time the threat passes, the old statement, "it costs too much," again blocks realization of the desalinization capability. Anybody who has been in Washington, and approximately everyone else everywhere today, is familiar with governmental budgeting and with the modes of developing public recognition of problems and bringing about official determination to do something about solutions. In the end, the problems are rarely solved, not because we don't know how, but because it is discovered either that it is said by those in authority that it costs too much, or that when we identify the fundamental factors of the environmental problems and laws are enacted to cope incisively with those factors, that there are no funds presently known to be available with which to implement the law. There comes a money bill a year later for implementation, and with it the political criteria of assessing wealth by which the previous year's bill would now seemingly cost too much. So compromises follow compromises. Frequently, nothing but political promises or under-budgeted solutions result. The original legislation partially stills the demands. The pressures on the politicians are lowered, and the lack of implementation is expeditiously shrugged off because of seemingly more pressing, seemingly higher priority, new demands for the money. The most pressing of those demands is for war, for which the politicians suddenly accredit weaponry acquisitions and military tasks costing many times their previously asserted concepts of what we can afford. Thus, under lethal emergencies, vast new magnitudes of wealth come mysteriously into effective operation. We don't seem to be able to afford to do peacefully the logical things we say we ought to be doing to forestall warring by producing enough to satisfy all the world needs. Under pressure, we always find that we can afford to wage the wars brought about by the vital struggle of have-nots to share or take over the bounty of the haves, simply because it has seemed theretofore to cost too much to provide the vital support of those have-nots. The haves are thus forced into self-defense suddenly to articulate and realize productive wealth capabilities worth many times the amounts of monetary units they had known themselves to possess, and, far more importantly, many times what it would have cost to give adequate economic support to the particular have-nots involved in the warring, and in fact, to all the world's have-nots. The adequately macro-comprehensive and micro-incisive solutions to any and all vital problems never cost too much. The production of heretofore non-existent production tools and industrial network of harnessed energy to do more work does not cost anything but human time, which is refunded in time gained minutes after the inanimate machinery goes to work. Nothing is spent. Potential wealth has become real wealth. As it is cliched, in the end, problem solutions always cost the least if paid for adequately at outset of the vital problem's recognition. Being vital, the problems are evolutionary, inexorable, and ultimately unavoidable by humanity. The constantly put off or undermet costs and society's official bumbling of them clearly prove that man does not know at present what wealth is, nor how much of whatever it may be is progressively available to him. We have now fleshed out a major variable in our general systems problem of man aboard Earth. The question, what is wealth, commands our prime consideration.